Hi, this is Matt from Skybow. You'd like to query data from SharePoint lists? With a Skybow CAML Builder, you can do that with ease.
For those of you who have never heard of CAML at all, I don't think so, but that's really the query language of SharePoint which is XML based to query content from SharePoint lists and libraries. And to make it easy to do that, because that's here on the right, you see this CAML query. Even for me, working with SharePoint for more than 10 years, it's again, I have to look up these notation in the internet. So that's why we've built a simple CAML builder to design your queries. And in there, we have a couple of options like the scope, what you want to query, just the items and the folders, or just the items, just top level or inside folders, recursive, etc. You can order the return items, very similar to a standard view where you can configure the order by fields. Configure a couple of filters. So you can combine them with and or. Define what are the view fields, so the return field values. If you don't specify anything, then the whole item is just returned, and the row limits how many items you want to get in return. And the good thing is you can also run it and test what will come back if you do that test. And so that's how it will look like. You would see the final query and also the results for this query here. I would get these three items and also the columns that I selected. And also, if you use expressions, that's also something you can do to make the query dynamic. And then you would see the expression, so the replaced placeholders. So the actual query which is sent to SharePoint in this dialog here. So we have three modes in this CAML builder. Maybe some of you have never seen that before because you're just using the designer, because that's the easiest to use. That's here on the top. The designer, I just explained where you design it, the query. The second mode is the XML view, which can be helpful if you have a query, maybe from the internet, from Google, from any website, and you just want to copy it in here, maybe make some adjustments, and then you can switch back to the designer view. And that's the second one. And the third one is the custom expression. And the custom expression is basically used if you need to have, so in that scenario here, we want to have a filter. It's configured on a lookup. And if you need to have a filter, but only for a certain condition, so then you can also in here, in this custom expression, you can put in any JavaScript code, but the final result or the return value needs to be a valid CAML query. So down here we can see we returned CAML query, and if the country is empty, then we return an empty CAML query, which means no filter. I will show you that in the demo afterwards, but that's one of the scenarios how it can be used if you have especially lookup filters, sublist filters, and you just want to have a filter being applied for this condition, and otherwise return empty. Or you have filter A is applied in that scenario, in that case, and in another case, return another query, another CAML query. So you could return different CAML queries, different filters on a dynamic condition. So that's when you would use this one. You can design the query in the designer, switch to XML, then copy the XML, and then paste it in here, that it just copy all on one line and return that one. Yeah. Then real quick, where can you find the builder now in Solution Studio? There are a couple of places where we've built in the CAML query. First of all is the get items action, which is available in the action builder. So that's this action here. You can get items from any list in any site, and down there, so you select the list, and then you can configure the filter. So this little icon will open up the CAML builder, and all the items that are returned, you can, for example, use in a loop, in the loop control, so that you can loop over these items. That is one place. Second one is the lookup filter I just described. Let's say you want to have a cascading dropdown. So a filter, the lookup based on something else. That would be on the lookup configuration. You have this lookup filter where you can use the CAML builder. Another option is on the sublist and sublibraries. So if you place a sublist or a list or a library on a form, you will also see in the configuration in the right panel, you can see a CAML filter where you can specify a certain filter, let's say to show only open tasks or closed tasks, stuff like that. So you can choose the filter here. The fourth option is in the background calculation of columns. There's also a demo I will show you where it's used. Actually, this one here. It's just a normal column from a list, in that case a library, and then on the column configuration you can use aggregation functionalities like total, sum, min, max, count, etc. But maybe you don't want to sum up all of the items which are assigned. So you don't want a total of all the items. Maybe you just want to have a total of some specific ones. In that case, we're going to filter or just sum up the total costs of receipts paid by the credit card. So that's the filter here in the background, in the column calculation dialog. Fifth option is the scheduled action. So if you configure a scheduled action on a list, you can also specify a filter, which basically will define on which items these actions should run. So only for, in that case, the deadline. So you have a filter which applies to a certain date. So today you have a deadline date, and if that date is reached, then do a reminder, an email. That's the filter here, and it can be used in the scheduled action configuration. Last but not least, and that's pretty new, only a couple of weeks ago, we've integrated the CAML builder into any expression editor, or at the bottom of the expression editor. So that's the expression editor here with the 3 modes here on top. You would see that new button showing up to open up the CAML builder and query any list directly from here. And that's also one thing I would like to show you and introduce you in the demo. So let's jump into the demo. So first of all, switching over here. And first scenario I would like to show you is I'm having a recruitment tracker, so candidate list, and here I have this scenario where I have a candidate. I want to set this candidate as active and start the onboarding. So that will bring up that form. And this candidate will apply to a certain position here, project manager. And as soon as I click on start set active and start onboarding, we will get, and I will show you in the background, we do have a list with onboarding task templates here. So those are all the tasks that should be created, and they are all assigned to a certain position. And if we check for project managers, 3 tasks are here. And now on this button to set it active and start the onboarding, I will get these 3 actions and then create a task for each of them. So if we go into Solution Studio, that was my form with the button here on top. So that's a command bar action, this one. And if we open up the action builder, we see we'll set some values, we'll save the form, and then that's this get items action, this one. I'm getting from the onboarding task templates here, I'm getting all the positions that contain the position of the candidate. And it's not, it should be completed by, should be set. That's just another filter. I can run it down here, so we'll see what will be returned. Okay, these 3. And here I don't need to specify any view fields or something. That's it. I don't need to do something else. And then I can use the loop control to access these items. So here, that's coming from the previous action. Here, that's my get item action, and I'm just accessing that items. That's my loop, and I'm looping over these 3 tasks, and I'm adding an item into the onboarding list. And I can access all the values like this. So it's just the current item of this loop dot title dot completed by. So the internal field values, I can access them right within this one here. So that is the one scenario which I personally use quite a lot to get items from a certain list and then loop over them and do something else in the loop. The other scenario that I was talking about with this custom expression is something we have configured in our wine cellar template. That's one of our templates. And if we look at the new form, so if you create a new wine, you add a new wine to your cellar, down here we have these country region selectors. And what I've added here is if there's no country selected, there's no filter. So I see all the regions, as you can see. I see Croatian, Italian, Germany, etc. But as soon as I choose a country, let's say Germany, this one is filtered to only see the German countries, regions. And that's exactly this filter, which is dynamic. It returns empty, so it will not filter the region lookup if that one is empty. And if it's set, it takes the country and will apply it here. So as soon as I delete the country again, the region is again open to select everything. And if we look at the configurations in the region, that's my lookup field. It's a normal lookup to another region list. In the settings, we see that filter down here. And as you can see, it's not a normal CAML query. It's JavaScript. And if you open up the CAML Query Builder from here, and it contains JavaScript, we will not show, or you cannot use the other sections here. So custom expression is used. That's why we have it in here. So that's my if my country is empty, return empty, else return that CAML query here. And it's the full query. Where query view. Oh. So that's my custom expression, which returns a whether empty string or a valid CAML query. And that will be applied as filter for the lookup. So that's one of the examples where I use a custom expression in for a CAML query. Then, whoops, sorry, I'm back. Another scenario is in the background. So if we have a list, in my scenario, I'm taking the expense request again, and we have receipts down here, those here, and on the columns of my expense request, we have two columns, a total column and a total paid by employee. And you see those are bold. They are having a calculation configured, skybow calculation. If you click on the gear icon, we will see the standard SharePoint column configuration, and on the top, the values tab. Here you see the aggregation functionality, so total, count, min, max, average, etc. And this one is just a full total cost aggregation. So it takes all the receipts, the total cost of them, and will sum them up. Down here we have an optional filter, which is empty in that case. But if I look at the other one, it's the exact same configuration, but having a filter applied. Here we see there's a filter. Again, we have the CAML Query Builder. And the only thing I'm doing here is I'm getting the all the items having the paid by credit card being set to no. So those are not paid by the credit card, it's paid by the employee, and that's the amount I would have to pay back to the employee each month if they've spent something by themselves. And here again, it's just that filter. As soon as you add an item, you remove an item, you change that property on an item, it will automatically recalculate and make a new sum automatically. The last scenario is the new thing that we have added to the expression builder. The scenario I would like to pick here to demonstrate it to you is our contract management template. In this contract management template, we have scheduled actions on the contracts where we say we would like to expire contracts, we extend the contracts, we send a deadline reminder, etc. So there are 3 of them configured in our templates. And let's just take the first one, the expire contracts. It will check here every day. It checks if the end date is today or less than today, and it's still active. If that's the case for all those contracts, it will do the following. It will update the item, set it to expired, send an email, and I've used our scope control here. And if something went wrong in here, I would like to get informed. And that's why in this has failed section, so this is the successful and the has failed is down here, I'm sending an internal email to our solution support address. But I don't want to have that part hard-coded. So I want to make that one configurable. And that's where you can use this new function, or one of the scenarios. What I was doing is I was adding an app config list here to my solution. I made it hidden. So here you can say make it visible or make it hidden. So it's a hidden library. That's how we do it quite often in solutions. App config. An app config list just contains a key and a value pair. So I was adding an error notification email, and the email is configurable in here. So here I have my solution support, and if I deploy that to another site or another customer or another production side, I can change that in the config list. So it's not hard-coded in my solution. It's really coming from the configuration list. So what I would like to do is I'm getting this error notification email dynamically. So I'm going back to contracts, scheduled, actions. And I don't want to have that hard-coded. So now with the expression builder, I can get rid of that hard-coded email address. And down here, we see that new icon, insert CAML query. I can open that one. First, I'm gonna select the list or library I want to query. And in my case, it's the app config list. And let's get rid of that filter. Just run it. And we will see, okay, here is my item. This one I would like to retrieve by the title. So I simply copy the title, error notification email. I'm adding a new condition where the title is equal to this one. So it should still return the same item. Nothing has changed. And I specify which column to return, and it's the value column. So this one. Here is my email address, value. Having that configured, down here, we have 4 options. We can simply insert that CAML as it is, as a CAML like this. So I just have the CAML, but that is not what I want. So we have other options. In some cases, you just need to have a CAML. What I can do, and select it again, I copy it, I open it up again, app config. Now I'm using the XML structure to show you how I can bring it in again, like this. Just paste it from previous, go back, and now I have it already here. What I need to do right now is I want to query that list using our query functions. So we have 3 query functions: query list, get values for query, or the one we need right now is the get first value for query. Get first value for query will get the first item with this condition. In my case, it's just 1 for sure, but theoretically there can be more. And it will return the value of this field. Or let's say if I select more than 1, I can do that. It will just take the first one selected. The first one is at the very end here in the selection, but it will return the first one. Or you simply select just the value. And if I do that here, we insert our function, which is also available in the context, by the way. So if you go to functions, so this is the get first value for query, get values for query, and query list is 3. But the CAML builder will automatically add this first value for query, having the list predefined, having the scope, the CAML query, and last but not least, the actual field to be returned. Now I can test that again in the CAML in the expression builder, and it should return the support address, right? Here we go. And that's without any coding, just having using the CAML builder right within the expression builder. I can say okay, and now these 2 fields where the email is sent to is fully dynamic. So you can easily deploy that solution to another site, adjust the email address who should receive these failed emails in the app config list, and you're fine. So you don't have hard-coded stuff in here. Yeah, and this query functions you can really use everywhere. That was just one example, but in other places, let's assume you have a loop. You can even, oops, not the scope, sorry. You have a loop control, and the iterating array can also be directly the outcome here of the CAML. Let's say contract, just give me contract. Where is it? Contract status is not empty to check what we have. So contract status is, sorry, let me simply select contract status. We see the different stages. So we have an expired one. Let me just get the one which is expired, equals by value expired, which should return one item, right? And if I would now remove this one and I say query list, it would be inserted as a query list function, which returns an array of objects. So, yeah, okay. I cannot test that here. But this would return the items from that query, and this would be a valid array to loop. So you don't even need to use the get items action. You could do it like this as well, or in any other place where you just have maybe you don't have an action builder. Maybe you're on a form somewhere where there's no action builder in a field calculation. You just have an expression field. You can use these query functions that you were able to use before, but there you had to write the CAML query manually, and now you can simply write the CAML query plus the whole function using that little CAML inbuilt CAML builder right within the expression builder.
Now you should know where and how to use the skybow CAML builder within Solution Studio.